welcome back to the Tech Talks Daily podcast. Now, one of the things I'm most proud of on this show is being able to share tech stories and stories from tech communities from all over the world. And I think so far we've had guests from over 70 different countries. And today, I want to take you on a virtual trip to speak to Mario Peshev, who is the CEO of DevriX, which is a global WordPress agency serving industries from publishing to fintech, healthcare, e-commerce, and he's notched up over 10,000 hours of training and consulting activities for organisations such as CERN, VMware, SAP, and so many others. But in addition to leading DevriX, Peshev also advises up-and-coming web developers and tech entrepreneurs, and has even had time to author a book called 126 Steps to Becoming a Successful Entrepreneur, The Entrepreneurship Fad and the Dark Side of Going Solo. In a nutshell, he's an incredibly cool guy. So buckle up and hold on tight, because today I'm going to beam your ears all the way to Bulgaria, where Mario is waiting to share his story. So a massive warm welcome to the show, Mario. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
Absolutely. So first off, thanks for having me. It's definitely a pleasure being here, and considering your pretty lengthy list of rock stars, I'm honored to be part of the show. My name is Mario Peshev. I'm a serial entrepreneur in charge of multiple ventures. DevriX, one of my most popular ventures, tech agency. Also have a consultancy, Growth Shuttle. I'm the CTO for a media tech startup in California called BrainJolt. And I'm also an angel investor and a business advisor for multiple ventures. Essentially, I've been around the block a couple of times. My first website I built in 1999. I was still a kid. It was revolving around Pokemon. And ever since, I've been super passionate about the tech scene and the digital world in itself.
Well, first of all, I've got to say, you are a rock star, my friend. That's why you're here right now. But I'd love to find out more about your origin story and where your passion for tech came from, or just a moment that might have put you on the path you're on today. What's your origin story?
So I would say that so again, my background is in tech. So I've spent, 20 years in software engineering for sure. And even as a leader of organizations and someone sitting in the executive suite, I don't spend that much time coding anymore. That said, again, my passion is tech. That's how I started ever since I was a kid. And back in the day, computers weren't really as popular, if at all, right? I had to I had to visit my mom at her, factory, and they have that. She was working and is still working in accounting. There's accountants had computers because they had accounting software, right? So in any break, I was trying to just use the computer and play video games, and just make sure I learn as much about technology as possible, simply because computers weren't as widespread as they are right now. So this kind of led me to this passion of I want to spend every single moment near technology, and I'm really grateful and in awe of technology and kind of what it represents. That's how I met the computer mechanics and the software engineers building the accounting software. And then ever since that moment, I knew, and that was probably 1994, 95 or so. Ever since that moment, I knew that computers and technology and kind of the new edge is kind of what I'm passionate about and what I want to do.
And I'm glad you mentioned video games there, because I think video games get a bad rap. Every parent telling their kids to stay off video games, they're bad for you. I would say a good 60, 70% of people on this podcast were only on this podcast and only got the career they have through playing video games. They're underrated, right?
I know. And again, I know it's a slippery slope, right? It's really easy to get addicted, and kids are, having a hard time just detaching themselves or understanding kind of where to draw the line. But again, my kids, they do have tablets, even though they're 5 and 7, and they, for the most part, they've grown with technology. And again, as long as you know how to balance this out with kind of the rest of the world, I really think it is a competitive advantage. It's a great way to just learn technology, right? It's kind of, even watching TVs, there are lots of educational shows that you can kind of present to them. There are lots of games that are puzzles or logic or motion or reaction training. Lots of opportunities to just turn that into kind of a positive trait. So I would say that kind of a similar thoughts about the internet in itself, right? So the internet could be a very dark place, with lots of dirty secrets and dangerous things. But at the same time, it's the source of education. It's Wikipedia, it's like university research, it's lectures, it's Harvard. It's like so it's really it's a double-edged sword. It really depends on how you're using that.
Yeah, it is just a tool. And after all, great power, with great power comes great responsibility, right? But
Most definitely.
In your case, your path would lead you to DevriX. So can you tell me more about that and your role as core contributor to the WordPress project and how it informs your work at DevriX too? Sounds incredibly cool.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So DevriX started as the continuation of my freelance, kind of full-time freelancing, which took about, 2 years, 2007 to 2009, give or take, which was more or less right where the recession started, the previous one, the Great Recession, for those of us who are not 20 and listening to the podcast. So that's kind of, again, my journey as a software engineer started early on, and kind of worked as a junior engineer and kind of a tech guy, even, spending several years just fixing computers and kind of reinstalling Windows and things like that. So again, as part of my role as an engineer in 2007, things weren't looking as great. So I was kind of supplementing and kind of working side jobs as a freelancer for a while, then turned to a full-time freelancer right in the midst of the recession. And kind of this journey, working for myself led to the evolution, hiring more people, growing the brand, and then forming DevriX in the first place. And kind of how it came to DevriX is probably a great question. So working my last job, I was a 9 to 5, fixed kind of office space employee. However, I was also working in a kind of distributed tech company, distributed in the sense of our headquarters was in Belgium, kind of our dev center of sorts was in Bulgaria. Our clients were in North and South America. And it was pretty tricky. Like I had not a single person on my team working in my office or even in my city. So that was kind of fairly devastating. I had conversations with my management. Remote work wasn't really a thing back then. I had conversations with them, and I was like, look, guys, it's kind of a 9 to 5 job, or like 9 to 6 in that case. So most of my clients are actually starting at 5 or 6 or 6:30 p.m. And I can't work from home, right? We have the security systems and code protection and whatnot. And essentially we only have like 30 to 60 minutes to get something done, or I'm sending a report end of day, and they take a look at that report in an hour, and I can no longer access my computer, unless, of course, I overtime and stay up until 10 p.m. at the office, but I can't really come in later. So there were some of these conversations, pretty uncomfortable ones. And one day I just had a kind of half day off. We had some medical exams or so, and I met some friends, near the kind of the mall, right, at the coffee shop, and they had that flexibility, right? One of them was a freelancer, one of them was working kind of a consulting job, and they were like, well, it's all about ROI, it's all about getting the job done, it's all about results oriented working environment. So this really struck a chord. It was kind of near the end of that process of, hey, things are not getting along too well. And that's how I decided to transition to a full-time freelancer, and that's how DevriX started accordingly. As to WordPress, the first couple of years were definitely finding and redefining ourselves and building every single project that comes our way, right? Digital, mobile apps, desktop solutions. Like I was building software for miners, just that kind of mine cards, porting gold from one end of the mine to the other. I was building a software for set-top boxes for hotels, the one that's kind of reservation system, and you book a seat at the restaurant down there. So all sorts of things, and WordPress was one of the tools that we used. And eventually, since we were really spread too thin across different things, we decided to specialize and kind of bought into the future and the vision of WordPress as one of the key software solutions / components that's going to bring the future of the web in the next years. And luckily, I believe that we kind of picked the right one.
Wow, incredibly cool. And before you came on the podcast, I was doing a little research on you guys. I quickly learned that DevriX has been involved in some pretty high-scale WordPress solutions over the years. Mm-hmm. I appreciate you probably can't share too many stories or add any names, but is there anything you can share about what you've developed for clients in multiple industries?
Yeah, of course. So again, my background as a software engineer was mostly into the enterprise space, right? We were working with telecoms, with banks, with multi-chain national stores, kind of working across multiple continents as well. And it's been a pretty diverse but very high-end, high-level enterprise space. Now, the problem is that even a prototype of a project used to take 6 to 9 months, right? There's kind of 3 months R&D and there's scoping, like everything is really, really slow. And back in our industry, it was very uncommon to build a solution and actually see the end of it unless you work for at least 3 years, because it's very likely that you start a project and again, you spend 2 or 3 years at the job and that project still hasn't even been launched, right? This was the backstory of enterprise. It's not too different right now, but let's say that things has sped up a little bit. So my background in enterprise, when I met WordPress as a kind of technical stack, I said, look, there are lots of people bootstrapping websites in hours, right? So there are lots of things that you can start with, and most of kind of the vendors are designers or bloggers or kind of people just earning some side income after hours, not really technical people building websites with existing components. But when it comes to building something custom, to a custom integration, like connecting an ERP, a CRM, or show, there's a very broad gap, and people they hit their limits based on what's already out there in the market. Or when a platform grows and kind of outgrows the current feature set, it becomes sluggish and slow and not too stable. They don't really have an alternative. They don't know how to speed it up, how to optimize it, how to refactor the code base, and kind of all the other technical, things that have to be accomplished in order to bring the project up to speed. So kind of starting DevriX was more about the intersection between enterprise and WordPress, like bringing enterprise to WordPress or allowing enterprise to grow on WordPress. Or when a company grows towards, small and medium enterprise, they can still stick to WordPress and they don't have to rebuild that entire technical stack. So as a result, again, we've worked with 3 banks. We've worked with Audi, the automotive manufacturer, building a network of sites for their entire kind of Benelux area plus Switzerland. We currently work with a subsidiary of Meta, the company behind Facebook. And again, we built lots of exciting tools and features, including software as a service applications. We've probably built 10 SaaS apps for clients for different things on top of WordPress. What else? Well, there's a lot to that, but we also have 2 CRM platforms ourselves built on top of WordPress 2, a time tracker system that we use internally in DevriX built on top of WordPress, and lots of other exciting things. Essentially, it's almost like a pet project to make sure that WordPress could be expanded toward anything if we so desire.
And I suspect that every business right now has accepted that the digital transformation is a journey, not a destination. And many are increasingly saying that we're entering phase 2 right now. But can you share your view on the importance of digital transformation for businesses and also how you guys at DevriX are helping companies in this process?
Of course, there's definitely some progress over the past decade or so compared to where we were, again, 10 or 15 years ago. A lot more businesses are aware of how important tech is and how much business is derived from online search, be it Google or social media or email lists or anything like that. So social presence is becoming ever so important. Now, there are some traditional businesses, especially, let's say, construction or even, education or just kind of more old school businesses like law firms that aren't necessarily caught up to digital in itself, or they don't understand kind of where's the bridge between what they do and what the opportunities are. I'm going to give an example with kind of a friend of ours that's kind of working in the same space. So he is specializing in bringing real estate companies to digital transformation by creating MOSs, which are extremely popular in the US, right? Multi-listing services, connecting multiple real estate firms in the same cluster, sharing jobs, sharing commissions, exchanging data, and just kind of providing customers to submit one job to one vendor, and then it gets spread out across like 10 or 15 different websites. So this kind of one example, like real estate is a very on-site type of thing, but you can still kind of access a broker, an agency. There's still kind of real estate listings out there, just as what we see on Zillow or so, but there's a lot more to that and many more opportunities to build on top of that. Maybe a decade ago or so, I was also working as a lead engineer for a Boston startup called Playster, and they were actually building a turnkey services, creating a website within 10 minutes for a broker, for a listing service, an agency that taps into all these multi-listing services, where you can say, all right, so I need a listing website that only focuses on that demographic or that geography, like let's say Southern California. I only want to provide 2-bedroom or 2-story houses with a pool that cost at least $500,000. And here's a list of 70 different designs that I can pick, right? Essentially, you tick a few boxes, next, and in about 10 minutes, you have a website running with all the listings available as APIs with your design. The only thing that's left is essentially populating your contact form and the about page, right? So I believe that providing so many opportunities, this is just one example, to individuals who cannot afford a complex solutions or small agencies that have been working with brick and mortars or just door to door, is a great way to just connect with more individuals, enable more business, and just provide more opportunities. And I'm saying that also from experience, because we just bought a new apartment several months ago, and some of our biggest challenges are finding, plumbers, electricians, and lots of people actually just working on the spot. Simply because they don't have websites, they don't have reviews, they don't have Facebook pages, and it's really hard to get to the right people because they don't even have digital presence themselves.
And the world has changed so much in the last 3 years, and we've gone on this journey of almost working remotely overnight to hybrid working where we are now. There's a lot of challenges around that, but I'd love for you to share your experiences around leading a distributed team at DevriX and the challenges and benefits of working in a remote environment, because you were doing it before it was cool, right?
Yeah, that's a great reminder. And to be completely honest, we actually moved in a lot of people in-house, which was definitely an interesting transformation, right? We started remote back in 2009 or so. Then we moved some people in. Of course, we still do have remote folks here and there, but it's been tough, right? So some of the services that we offer, and that's kind of one of the reasons I'm probably going to open a separate bracket, but that's one of the reasons we also started different businesses, because some of them can be run remotely, right? With weekly sprints, with planning. And that's where like these industries and these businesses allow us to be fully 100% remote. But at the same time, what we also saw at DevriX is that some people are really on site, and some people are really passionate about working and brainstorming with other people. Like, to give you an example, like most of our let's say junior to mid-level developers, first off, they wouldn't be having opportunities if we were fully remote. And second, kind of most of their feedback is, we want even more time with mentors, with senior developers, with project managers, just working side by side with us on different projects. So right now it's more of a hybrid mode, right? We do have some people in-house. We have some seniors that are, remote, or some of the people who just, transitioned and went to their hometowns during the pandemic. But it's a very interesting dynamic, and kind of the wild surprise for us is just having a bunch of people who really love the office and really need that collaboration and communication internally, which is, I would say, which is rare to find nowadays.
It really is, especially when we're talking about recruiting online, onboarding remotely, and it can be challenging in making new employees feel important to the company, and engagement can often suffer. So I'm curious, what kind of strategies have you implemented at DevriX for successful recruitment and management, and also making sure people contribute to the company's growth and feel a part of that company too?
Mm-hmm. So there are probably lots of components to that, but I would say the first one is company culture. We are fairly transparent. We are still a team of about 50 people or so, but I'm extremely accessible. I'm on Slack. I'm attending kind of all remote company meetings. I'm in no channels. Like, everyone can kind of reach out to me. I publish lots of content, so like everyone who wants to know more can actually follow me on websites and social and whatnot. So that's kind of the first thing. I believe that in a small organization, the leader or the founder, or kind of whoever is on top, should be reachable first, and second, should have a very clear understanding, kind of transparent vision of kind of what's right and what's wrong, so that people can actually relate to that. Right? We do have established processes. We have core values. We have a strong leadership team that's kind of developing different departments internally, and we meet weekly and kind of establish, again, processes and OKRs and kind of everything else to make sure that we are speaking the same language, and we are not like we provide the same story to everyone so that it's consistent, it's trustworthy, and people don't actually get mixed signals from different people. So I would say that kind of internal communication strategy combined with a very clear, transparent vision on top, and a very friendly culture, welcoming feedback and opinions, and even rant or like anything that comes our way, is definitely a key to making sure that we get great culture internally, that we attract great people at events, at conferences, that this kind of public presence attracts and welcomes more people, and also people internally are happy enough to extend recommendations to their own kind of friends and former colleagues to come and join us.
And as I said at the very beginning of the podcast, you are a rock star. You've got a great book, 126 Steps to Becoming a Successful Entrepreneur, the Entrepreneurship Fad and the Dark Side of Going Solo. And what's refreshing about it is, I think you've done this on purpose, it's a no BS take on the startup world challenges, especially around becoming an overnight success, projects, the reality for starting entrepreneurs during those essential and crucial 6 to 18 months in the game. I'm curious, can you tell me more about the book and your experience as an entrepreneur and the insights you gained along the way?
Yeah, you bet. And I'm really grateful that you kind of read the full title, because really the dark side of going so is the most important part of the name of the book, right? The rest is mostly a clickbait, because it's really easy to just buy a copy if you see that. But really kind of the different take on this book is the entrepreneurship fad, and kind of how boasted entrepreneurship is compared to what it really looks like, and the dark side of going so, how different it is, where you don't get support, when people don't understand that you need to be on kind of late night calls or kind of fix production issues on a Saturday or anything along those lines, right? So entrepreneurship could be very lonely. It's a lot of grind over the first year. It's barely profitable, usually isn't. Lots of startups fail, right? About 80 or 85% of startups don't make it through the first 5 years. And it's almost a gamble. It requires resilience, hard work, time, passion, commitment, and it's not for everyone. And kind of the reason I wrote this book is I normally tell people around me, especially when I'm teaching at high schools or universities, or kind of with younger people who are really passionate about that. I'm always telling them, look, like if you're really passionate about entrepreneurship, read this book, right? I'm giving you a free copy, or like sending you a PDF, whatever. Just read it. So like, this is part of my life story, part of the struggles I've gone through, part of the pain I've been through. Like I'm explaining some cases where I'm literally eating, bread and cheap salami for like several months, or like taking loans from friends for like a couple of months. But like, I really can't make rent, right? It is painful. It's not an experience people are willingly talking about. And the other thing I'm saying, like, if that sounds exciting, if you're still hell yeah, then fine, go for it. But if it's like, wait, that's not exactly what I presented, or what I was presented, or that's not the lifestyle I want to live, well, perhaps either, quit it altogether, or just take it a few more years, right? Learn on the spot, grow your network, figure out how the sausage is made, as they say, right? There are lots of ways to actually make it work in an exciting way without just jumping to this fad. And again, I was also speaking on bootstrap companies versus VCs, and sharing my experience at a session the other day. And the biggest question, kind of the feedback afterwards, was, hey, thanks for providing us the kind of the brutal assessment of bootstraps, how hard it is starting with no money, how hard it is not having competitive wages for top talent, or like all that, fancy offices, because it looks so exciting when you open Mashable or TechCrunch or Crunchbase, and you read about the next round and the next investment, and that, shiny new object syndrome in VCs in the startup world. But again, like, people forget that this is probably 1,000, or like 1/10 of 1,000 of what's happening in the startup ecosystem, and everyone is grinding and trying to make it day by day.
And another thing that attracted me to you, and why I wanted to get on this podcast today, is despite your success, it's never just about you, and you're passionate about giving back. So can you share a little bit more about your role as an advisor to up-and-coming web developers and tech entrepreneurs, etc.? Because that really comes across from the research I was doing on you guys. It's really important to you, right?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I definitely believe in having a purpose, and working a 9-to-5 job is not a purpose, or building a an X business is not a purpose unless you're Musk and shipping people to the moon, right? I don't I don't believe that most people have such a purposeful venture to really change the world.
Yeah.
So with that in mind, I believe that we need to be grateful that we have had a chance, the opportunity to build something for ourselves, or just get a career and like be healthy and just give back. I believe that it's part of good karma and some form of a legacy that I want to leave behind myself, so that my life hasn't been lived for nothing. So that's why it's so important. And back starting in 2006 or so, kind of my first development job, it was part of a technical boot camp that I took. And they said, hey, we have an opportunity to actually provide a kind of a split 50-50 job, 50% development, 50% training in a similar boot camp fashion. I was like, well, that sounds like the most exciting thing that I've ever heard. So as a result, I've spent over 10,000 hours in training, consulting, coaching, mentoring over the past, 15 plus years now, maybe 17 years. And it's a great way for me to just connect to the younger audience, or like inexperienced people transitioning to better future, to different initiatives. And what I'm trying to do is kind of split my efforts in two. First one is, it's almost like a B2B versus B2C, but like first one is students, fresh employees, juniors, adepts, trying to help them become better people, be more passionate about their work, be better, more proficient employees, stick to workplace ethics and kind of all of that. So that when they're great employees, they're going to have a great career start, or jump, great recommendations, great future prospects, right? And the other part is helping businesses, build resilient and great processes internally, operationally, and make sure that whatever they do is a workplace which is worthwhile and really a great workplace to invite people to work for, right? So that's more or less how I'm trying to contribute on both fronts whenever I can.
Love that. And I always try and put the place where the guest is talking to me from on the map too, especially learn more about the tech scene, the startup scene, especially outside of Silicon Valley. So with that in mind, can you tell me more about the scene in Bulgaria and the tech community over there, and anything that you can shout about?
Yeah, Bulgaria is, so there are lots of things that people don't know about Bulgaria. Again, I've been born and raised in Bulgaria and kind of spent most of my life here raising kids and family, and kind of our headquarters, DevriX headquarters, are here in Bulgaria, even though we have different businesses. But the story of the first computer, first personal computer and stuff, is it's invented by John Atanasov, who actually comes from Bulgarian descent, right? So he, it claimed that John Atanasov is a Bulgarian, right? I mean, he's been a kid who emigrated like several years later and stuff. But we do have a deep-rooted history in technology ourselves. Up until several years ago, the internet in Bulgaria was one of the fastest internets on the planet. We consistently ranked in like top 10 or top 15 in the world, and that provided lots of opportunities. Accessible, very fast internet in Europe, within the European Union, is a great place to plug any company, right? If you're in the States, kind of moving to Europe, it's a great place over here. Again, great internet, great connectivity, technical history, lots of kind of, smart talent. It's close like bridges to Asia, right? Historically, if you take a look at history, from 10th century to the 18th century, essentially, it's been a pretty critical place. It's close to Istanbul, historically Constantinople. So there's geography in place, there's a connection with the European Union, there's tech history, and all that really contributes to a very strong startup scene. Since you also mentioned, WordPress in my role as a core contributor, Bulgaria has been one of the companies with the strongest WordPress communities, with one of the largest WordCamps. The second ever WordCamp Europe, uniting the European community, was also based in Bulgaria, right? We have really resilient startups, right? People are rarely giving up, right? If they can really work it out, they go to their village, they visit their grandma, literally just eating tomatoes off the garden, but really working on their startup. It's very, brutal, but very exciting place at the same time. Very strong VC scene, right? I'm really excited to be working with some people in funds like 11 here, or Richer Partners. There's a growing angel investment community as well, like Seedling, that I definitely recommend, which are also investing in UK startups, by the way. So yeah, I definitely recommend the Bulgarian community. Anyone who's kind of interested, definitely read up on that, just connect with me, and I'm going to provide some feedback, contacts, or anything that would be of interest.
Absolutely love that. And I cannot thank you enough for taking time out of your busy day to share your story, insights that help businesses with your knowledge, etc. But I want to see if there's something we can do for you today. We started talking about your origin story. Some of the biggest names in business, VC funding and tech have either been guests or listened to this podcast. So I'm going to ask you, is there a person you'd love to have a private breakfast or lunch with, and why? Because he or she might just listen to this. So let's see what we can manifest together. But who would that person be?
That's great. And by the way, just having Gary on the spot is like a whole new thing. So yeah, I can't say enough about that. Because again, you've had the opportunity to just have this conversation. I would say probably a few names on top of my head. Mark Cuban, really excited about getting one of the biggest sharks, Shark Tank, a great entrepreneur, lots of technical history. Just a titan in the startup and tech and entrepreneurship world. Is one of the persons that I would definitely recommend. Warren Buffett, the Oracle of Omaha, is of course kind of one of my biggest great examples of entrepreneurship. And Graham Stephan, who is a YouTube podcaster and also talking about personal finance and investment, and really great show, really great dynamics. And probably last one, Syed Bauki from Automotive, building a great set of ecosystems and sites and plugins and solutions on top of WordPress. Great entrepreneur, great founder, great coacher. Pick a few. I think it's a great list so that you can probably queue a few of them if they get the opportunity to hop on the podcast. Would be lovely.
Well, I'm putting those names straight out into the universe. Hopefully one of them will contact you. But before I let you go, where's the best place for anyone to find out more about the work that you're doing, contact your team, follow you on social media, etc.? What's the best starting point for everything?
Yeah, probably the best hub for that is my personal website, which is mariopeshev.com. I'm also Mario Peshev on LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram. I do have at Daily Peshev account, which is kind of business stories and podcasts. And I'm also on all the other networks, honestly, just not as active. I'm a great believer of repurposing content and also connecting with as many people as possible. So you can even find me on like TikTok and maybe on Snapchat and YouTube. So lots of places. But mariopeshev.com, my website /hub, filled with lots of tutorials and links to the other network, is probably going to be a great start for everyone willing to connect.
Well, fantastic. Thank you so much for sitting down with me today. Love chatting with you. We've covered a lot in a short amount of time there, from business, how you're helping businesses scale operations, investing in digital transformation, implementing successful recruitment and management strategies. And one thing we didn't get to talk about there was how you're also advising up-and-coming web developers and tech entrepreneurs. And I think you've attracted something like 2.5 million views in your transparent discussions online there. So I'll include all those links and a link to your book. But more than anything, just thank you for sharing your story today.
Thanks again for having me, and thanks everyone for listening, and wishing you a great rest of the day and the week.
What an incredibly cool guy, a rock star in every sense of the word. And I can't thank him enough for coming on here, talking about his story and also how he's giving back to the community, and also talking about the tech scene in Bulgaria. It is so important to get these stories out there. And I urge anyone listening, I know you're listening in 165 countries, and I want to put where you're listening to this podcast on the map too. So I want to hear about your tech scene, the startup scene, the opportunities, the drawbacks, everything. And if you'd like to come on here and represent where you live, please let me know now. Email me, techblogwriter@outlook.com, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram @NeilCHughes. And if you don't have a business or you don't want to come on, I'd also just love to hear where you listen to the podcast. Maybe send me an image of where you're listening in the world so I can live my life vicariously through your eyes. So please keep those images and requests and questions coming over, and I'll return again tomorrow with another guest. But a big thank you for listening today, and until next time, don't be a stranger.